By the morning of August 22nd, 1986, almost no one was left alive in the villages below the lake. There were no wounds on the bodies. The houses were standing, doors and walls intact. Cattle lay dead in the yards where they'd been standing. Nothing was broken, nothing was burned. And the lake itself had not risen an inch. It hadn't flooded, hadn't spilled its banks, hadn't sent a single wave downhill. It hadn't moved at all. 1,746 people died in one night, in a ring of villages stretching 15 miles out, and the thing that killed them was a lake that never touched them. No water in their lungs, no flood through their homes. Whatever came out of that lake, it wasn't water. To understand what came out, start with how ordinary the place was. Lake Nyos sits in the northwest of Cameroon, in the crater of a volcano that hasn't erupted in a very long time. A deep, round pool of water filling an old wound in the earth, ringed by green hills. From the rim, it's beautiful. Blue, still, quiet, the kind of water you'd photograph and think nothing more about. Below it, the land drops away into valleys, and in those valleys were villages. Nyos, Subum. Farming communities, built where people had lived for generations, with fields on the slopes and cattle in the yards. It was a settled, unremarkable landscape. Water above, homes below, the way people had arranged themselves around lakes and valleys everywhere on Earth for thousands of years. High ground and low ground. And the low ground was where you built, because that's where the water and the road and the fields were. Nobody living there thought of the lake as dangerous. Not because they were careless, because nothing about it looked like a threat. It didn't rise, it didn't churn, it didn't smell wrong. It just sat in its crater, year after year, blue and calm. And that was the problem. The danger in Lake Nyos wasn't on the surface, where people could see it and learn to fear it. It was 200 meters down, at the bottom, in the dark, building for decades. Here's what was sitting at the bottom. Under the crater, deep below the water, runs the old channel the magma once climbed to reach the surface. The volcano is quiet now, but the magma is still down there, and for centuries it has been doing one slow thing: leaking gas. Carbon dioxide, seeping up out of the rock, into the groundwater, into the very bottom layer of the lake. And in most lakes, that wouldn't matter. In most lakes, the water turns over. Seasons change, the surface cools, the top sinks, the bottom rises, and anything trapped down deep gets carried up and released a little at a time. Lake Nyos does not turn over. It sits in a sheltered crater, in a climate with no hard seasonal swing, and the layers stay put. Top stays on top. Bottom stays on the bottom, for decades. So the carbon dioxide had nowhere to go. It dissolved into that still, cold, deep water and stayed there. And more arrived, and more. And the weight of 200 meters of water pressing down from above held all of it in solution. Think of a bottle of soda. The gas is invisible, dissolved, completely calm, as long as the cap is on and the pressure holds. Nothing about a sealed bottle looks dangerous. Lake Nyos was a bottle of soda 200 meters deep, and the only thing holding the cap on was the weight of its own water. Decades of gas, dissolved and waiting, under a lid made of nothing but the lake itself. As long as no one shook the bottle, you could live on that cap your whole life and never know it was there. On the evening of August 21st, something shook the bottle. No one knows exactly what shook it. A landslide down the crater wall, maybe? A small earth tremor? A slab of rock breaking loose underwater. The trigger was never pinned down, and in a way it doesn't matter because the lake had been ready for years. It needed almost nothing. Just enough of a nudge to lift a little of that deep, gas-heavy water upward, off the bottom, where the pressure holding the gas in was slightly weaker. And that's all it took to start the chain. Because once that first pocket of deep water rises even a little, the pressure on it drops, and the gas begins to come out of solution. Bubbles form. Bubbles are lighter than water, so they rise. And they drag the water around them up with them. That rising water hits lower pressure still and releases its gas faster, which lifts more water, which releases more gas. It feeds itself. It accelerates. Uncork the bottle and the fizz doesn't trickle. It rushes all at once, faster and faster until it's spent. Witnesses near the lake heard it, a deep rumbling. a bubbling roar coming off the water. Some saw a white mist rising as the surface began to heave. And then the lake threw a fountain of water and foam close to 100 meters into the air, a column of spray standing over the crater in the dark. Under it, the water was turning over from the bottom up, dumping everything it had held for decades. What took the magma years to load into that lake came back out in minutes. The lake didn't spill, it exhaled. And what it exhaled behaved nothing like a gas you'd expect to rise and blow away. Carbon dioxide is heavier than air, denser by about half again at the temperature it came out. So it didn't lift into the sky and thin out on the wind. It did the opposite. It sank. A cloud of it, hundreds of thousands of tons, poured over the rim of the crater and ran downhill, not drifting, flowing like an invisible flood, following the same valleys the rivers followed, filling the low ground because low ground is where heavy things settle. And carbon dioxide kills by taking the place of air. Where the cloud flowed, it pushed the oxygen out, and anything breathing inside it had nothing left to breathe. It moved through the valleys at speeds estimated near 100 kilometers an hour, into Cha, into Nyos, into Subum, and it reached the villages at night when almost everyone was asleep. You can't see carbon dioxide, you can't smell it, not really. You can't hear it coming. There's no splash, no roar at your door, no wall of water to run from. The only escape was up, higher ground above the cloud, above the heavy layer hugging the valley floor. And the villages were built down in the valleys, where people had always built because that's where life had always been safest. The one direction that meant survival was the one direction the geography had never pointed them. Here's the detail that stays with me. The gas rose high enough that livestock died on hillsides 120 meters above the surface of the lake, up slopes people would have called safe. And the plants were fine. The grass, the crops, the trees, untouched. The cloud only took what needed to breathe. It swept through, killed every animal and person in its path, and left the fields green behind it. It left the fields green, and it left survivors. Not many, and not in the valleys. The ones who lived were higher up the slopes, at the thin edge of the cloud where a little air remained, and living through it was its own strange horror. People didn't feel death coming. They felt suddenly weak, suddenly breathless, and went down, unconscious. Not for a moment, for hours. They collapsed in the night and woke up the next day, groggy, confused, sick, in a world that had gone silent around them. They woke to find everyone below them dead. Family, neighbors, whole villages, gone in the yards and the beds where they'd been. And no one, not the survivors, not the first officials to arrive, could say what had happened. There was no fire, no flood, no attacker, just the dead, and the standing houses, and a calm blue lake. But here's the part that turns this from a tragedy into something worse. It had happened before. 2 years earlier, almost to the day, on August 15th, 1984, a smaller lake called Manun, about 100 kilometers to the south, did the exact same thing. A cloud of carbon dioxide came out of the water in the night and flowed down a low stretch of road. 37 people died. Investigators found vehicles stopped along the dip in the road, drivers and animals dead beside them. No wounds, no cause anyone could see at first. And one scientist looked hard at Manun and understood it. An Icelandic volcanologist worked out that magmatic carbon dioxide had been building in the deep water for a very long time and had come out all at once. He wrote it up. He called it a previously unknown natural hazard, one that could wipe out whole towns. And a few months before Nyos, he submitted that paper to Science, one of the most respected journals in the world. Science rejected it. Too far-fetched. What stops me is that the warning wasn't just unread. It was written down, argued, and handed to the people whose job is to know. And they turned it away as implausible. A few months later, the same phenomenon killed 50 times as many people at Lake Nyos. After Nyos, the world finally believed it. And then it had to do something about a lake that was already refilling with gas. Since 2001, there are pipes in Lake Nyos. A pipe run down into the deep layer lets a little of that gas-heavy water rise on its own. And once it starts, the bubbles keep it going without any pump, venting the carbon dioxide in a controlled fountain instead of a catastrophic one. Manun got the same treatment. It works. But it doesn't fix the cause. The magma is still down there. The gas is still seeping up every day into both lakes. The pipes don't stop the source, they just bleed off what it delivers, which means someone has to keep those lakes on a machine forever. And think about what that machine is holding back. The thing that killed 1,746 people wasn't exotic. It was carbon dioxide. The same gas in every fizzy drink. The same gas you breathe out right now. The same gas that, in the shallow water story, your body can actually feel building up and begs you to vent. That's the cruel symmetry. Your body has a carbon dioxide alarm, a good one, the only warning system it owns. But that alarm fires on the gas inside you, from your own breathing. It has nothing to say about carbon dioxide flooding in from outside, replacing the air in the room while you sleep. The one gas your body is built to sense, arriving in the one way it can't warn you about. There are only 3 lakes on Earth known to do this: Nyos, Monoon, and the third is Lake Kivu, on the border of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Thousands of times larger than Nyos, with somewhere around 2 million people living along its shores. Kivu has never erupted. That's why they watch it, without stopping, year after year. A lake that has never once shown what it can do, sitting under 2 million people, holding its breath. Beneath doesn't stop at the surface. Subscribe and we'll show you the next quiet place that's still holding something in.